Mr. President.
Senator from New Hampshire.
Mr. President, I ask that the quorum call be lifted.
Without objection.
Thank you. With summer approaching, the travel season will soon be in full swing. And this week, we celebrate National Travel and Tourism Week. It's a time to call attention to the importance that travel and tourism plays in our national economy and in the creation of jobs. And I know the President understands this issue very clearly because his state of Alaska, like the state of New Hampshire, has travel and tourism as a very important industry. And the fact is that the travel and tourism industry is one of the top 10 industries in 48 states, and it supports over 14 million American jobs. In New Hampshire, travel and tourism is our second largest industry, and it supports over 60,000 jobs in New Hampshire. The Travel Promotion Act, which Congress passed in 2008 and which I was very proud to be one of the co-sponsors, will help the United States compete for foreign travelers. This year, we will begin to see the impact of this landmark legislation. For most of our history, the United States has been one of a very few developed countries that did not advertise overseas. The Travel Promotion Act changes all of that because it created what is called Brand USA. It's a low-cost public-private partnership, and Brand USA has just started rolling out an advertising campaign for America. Brand USA is going to leverage millions of dollars in contributions to the private sector to help encourage more foreign travelers to bring their dollars to the United States. And this is important because what we've learned in New Hampshire is that overseas visitors tend to stay longer when they get to America, and they tend to spend more money. So this advertising is going to be the first time that we're going to be advertising overseas to attract visitors to come to the United States. But there's even more that we can and should do working together to support the travel sector. Travel and tourism rely on a good infrastructure, on keeping our highways, our bridges, our airports running. That's essential for the travel industry to grow. That's why it was so important that this year, after many years of trying, we finally reauthorized the FAA, and with that legislation are putting in place a new next-gen system of air traffic control that's going to allow our airplanes to get from point to point faster and more efficiently. And that's why it's so critical that we pass the highway bill that is pending in Congress. That's at a committee of conference. We've passed that bill in the Senate on an overwhelming bipartisan vote, and now we need to get this bill out of the Congress. We also need to look at ways to improve our visa system so that we can make it easier for foreign travelers to come to the United States. We need to pass legislation, and there are several bills that have been introduced that will help us clear the backlogs of visa applications so that we can make sure that those travelers who want to come to the United States are going to be able to do so. Again, bearing in mind that those overseas visitors tend to stay longer and spend more money. So, Mr. President, I want to conclude by highlighting what is an exciting new campaign in New Hampshire to help build New Hampshire's reputation as a world-class travel destination with something to offer for everyone. I know that a lot of people have been to New Hampshire every 4 years as part of our presidential primary, that a lot of people are familiar with our state's slogan, "Live Free or Die." This slogan actually captures what was uttered by General John Stark, who was a Revolutionary War general talking about the British during the Revolution. Just a few days ago, our State Division of Travel and Tourism Development launched a new campaign to promote New Hampshire, to show the world what we have to offer as a unique travel destination. And that campaign very cleverly plays on our famous state slogan. So we can see in this advertisement, live free and explore. It's one of our beautiful lakes. We can see the family out canoeing. We also have another one, live free and reconnect. A family out hiking. We can see some of our mountains in the background. They're not quite as high as the mountains in Alaska, but we think they're a great place for families to come and explore. Hikers can enjoy, you can reconnect and relax. This one is live free and discover. Again, kids getting ready to jump into one of our lakes. We can see the wilderness in the background. Another great example of one of the opportunities that New Hampshire has to enjoy our beautiful state. So we're very proud of what New Hampshire has to offer. We have a new logo that shows how you can visit our travel and tourism site on the web and see what New Hampshire has to offer. We hope that all of those who have come to experience our presidential primary will come back every 4 years and maybe in the meantime come and look at what we have to offer for enjoying the natural beauty and activities of the state. Now, we would like that, but I understand that all of us here in Washington have very busy schedules and that sometimes finding time to travel is difficult. But fortunately, soon we're going to have a great opportunity for everyone on the Hill to experience what New Hampshire has to offer without even leaving the building. On June 6th, the New Hampshire State Society and our office are going to be hosting a reception called Experience New Hampshire. It's a great opportunity to experience New Hampshire's signature hospitality, our history, our culture, and our scenic beauty. I invite all of my colleagues to enjoy New Hampshire beverages, to taste some of the menus from our historic grand hotels and our charming inns, and to come and celebrate with us. So, as we celebrate travel and tourism this week, I hope all of us will take a few minutes to reflect on the importance of this industry to our state and local economies and to the country. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. As we wait for a senator to speak, an update on some of what happened in the House today. Representatives passed legislation to prevent an across-the-board budget cuts from starting on January 1st. The GOP legislation replaces a 10% cut to the military budget with cuts to domestic programs like food stamps and health care. The Associated Press writes that the 218 to 199 vote sends the measure here to the Senate, where it's a dead letter with Democratic leaders, who insist on keeping the automatic cuts in place until Republicans agree to a mixture of tax increases and spending cuts to address the nation's deficit. A headline in Roll Call reads, Export-Import Bank Bill Hits Snag in Senate. With a bill to avert a doubling of student loan interest rates stalled, Senate Democratic leaders are finding it difficult to move on to a House-passed bill reauthorizing the Export-Import Bank. The House passed the measure 330-93 with broad bipartisan support. And given the overwhelming House vote, Senate Democratic leaders had hoped to pass the measure by unanimous consent and get it off their to-do list. But Republicans want to offer amendments to the bill, and talks have been underway about what amendments the two parties are willing to accept. The G8 summit is scheduled for May 18th and 19th. Reuters writes that of all the signals and symbols that shape Russian foreign policy, this one seemed particularly blunt. Vladimir Putin is one of the first decisions of his new presidency, will shun a Group of 8 summit hosted by President Obama. The G8 visit was to have been Putin's first foreign trip since he returned to the Kremlin on Monday, a chance to begin putting U.S. ties back on track after a growth in tension over missile defense, Syria, and Russia's presidential campaign. Instead, President Putin is sending his junior partner, Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev, and a message that as long as he's in charge, Russia will not bend to Washington's will when its interests are at stake. At 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to have an event on C-SPAN 3 on U.S.-Russia relations on the eve of the G8 summit, hosted by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, including someone speaking, the Russian ambassador to the U.S. That's happening at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on C-SPAN 3. The pending business in the Senate is renewing the charter for the Export-Import Bank. In primetime tonight, after the Senate is out, we're going to have a Senate Armed Services Subcommittee hearing on readiness, including representatives of the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force. That'll be here on C-SPAN 2 tonight at 8 Eastern, if the Senate is out.
The Leader.
I ask unanimous consent that we be allowed to take off the quorum call.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the motion proceed to calendar number 396, H.R. 2072, which is an act to reauthorize the Export-Import Bank of the United States, to be adopted. That there be no amendments, motions or points of order in order to the bill other than budget points of order, and the applicable motions waived. That there be an hour of debate equally divided between the two leaders or the designees prior to a vote on passage of the bill.
Is there objection?
Mr. President, reserving the right to object, I would ask the Majority Leader to modify his request to accommodate a few amendments. Therefore, I ask consent that the request be modified to allow the following amendments. Corker, number 2102, financing for transactions subsidized by export credit agencies. Vitter, 2103, prohibitions on funds used for energy development outside of the U.S. Toomey, 2104, a $40 billion increase contingency. Lee, number 2100, phase out. And Paul, 2101, limitation on XM support. And I further ask consent that following the disposition of the listed amendments, the bill be read 3 times and the Senate proceed to vote on the passage of the bill with a 60-vote threshold. Before the chair rules, I would say that the sponsors of the amendments would be prepared to enter into short time agreements in order to facilitate consideration of the bill.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. Mr. President, these amendments that has just been listed, we're familiar with 3 of them. The other 2, I haven't had the chance to review, or has my staff, and I don't think anyone else has. So we'll be happy to continue to study these and take a look at them. Happy to do that. The only thing I would say is that, and I have other things to say, and I know that my friend, the Assistant Republican Leader, has places to go, so I would give a statement a little later, but based on what I've just said and what I'm going to say, I object.
Mr. President, I appreciate that. I hope we can continue to work together. As to the original request, then we would have to pose an objection as well.
Mr. President, yesterday...
Objection is heard.
Yesterday, the House...
Is heard to both requests.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Yesterday, the House sent the Senate a bipartisan reauthorization of the Export-Import Bank. The bill that the House passed reflects a negotiated agreement that was struck between Democrat and Republican leaders. They worked hard. They came up with an agreement. As one would expect with an agreement of that nature, the House passed it with a very strong vote. The vote was 330 to 93. Every single Democrat voted for the measure, and only the far-right Tea Party wing of the House Republican caucus voted against the bill, 93 of them. So it was 330 to 93. The House considered no amendments. The House passed a bill on suspension calendar. For those of us that served in the House, that's a bill that comes up and there's almost no debate, and it takes a two-thirds vote to pass it. They do it for non-controversial items. Mr. President, this measure at this time is non-controversial. It should never have been controversial. We brought it up here 2 months ago, and we were stunned when the Republicans wouldn't let us move forward on it. So the House did the right thing yesterday. This is the sort of bill that Senate should now simply pass without amendment. Mr. President, it's so unusual here. I'm been here in Congress 30 years, but this is a new one. Even bills that they agree on, they want to mess around with them. In years past, this would have gone through here just like this. Forget about what took place 2 months ago, but now the House passed something 330 to 93, and we're here playing around with it. It should be done. We should have passed it yesterday. This thing's going to expire. So it's hard to comprehend what the new mantra of the Republicans in the Senate, what it is. I don't get it. As I indicated in earlier days, the Senate would have passed this bill by unanimous consent, as we've done before, this same legislation. But these days, the far-right Tea Party wing of the Senate Republican caucus, I used to just talk about the House wing of the Tea Party, but it's over here now, who think that everything has to be a fight. Everything. So we're going to have a vote on this rather than do it by unanimous consent. The bank will hit its lending limit any day, and its current authorization ends at the end of this month, May. So it'll be very important we work to pass the House bill as quickly as possible. If we amend the bill and send it back to the House, we have to start all over again. House of Representatives is basically not in session this month. They're under their very difficult schedule of working 2 weeks on and 1 week off, and then sometimes longer than that. So I don't know when they're going to be here. It would be so much better on a non-controversial, very important piece of legislation. Last year, 300,000 jobs. Not 30,000, Mr. President, 300,000. Now we understand the Senate Republican caucus, they want to offer amendments. The amendments are, I don't know for sure, but I look just glancing at them. I think they may be relevant. But we'll take a close look at them. But there's no question the ones that I'm familiar with are efforts to gut the program. One of the amendments just eliminates it. How about that? So we're going to continue looking at the amendments we have and those that we haven't studied and look at them, and I'll try to be reasonable. So as we do that, Mr. President, we're going to vote on this. I'm going to file cloture in just a second here, which I hate to do. Another motion to proceed. Well, if there were ever a time when Tom Udall and Jeff Merkley were prophetic, it's tonight. These two young, fine senators said it was time we changed the rules in the Senate, and we didn't. They were right. The rest of us were wrong, or most of us anyway. What a shame. So here we are, wasting time because of the Republicans. This week we've accomplished a lot, Mr. President. We had a vote on a judge, and we voted on cloture, on the Republicans defeating our ability to get something done with student loans. That's our workload this week. I know it's been tough, but Mr. President, That was sarcastic, of course. But this is just absolutely mindless what's going on. And then to top it off, one of the finest members of the Senate we've had ever was defeated yesterday by a man, listen to this, Mr. President, who campaigned on the platform that there's too much compromise in the Senate. And he's going to come back here and not compromise with anybody on anything. Now that's what we need in the Senate. More people who are willing to do nothing but fight. So, Mr. President, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to take the steps to keep this measure moving forward. I hope we can do it next week. I hope we can do it without a lot of trouble, which we already have too much. So I have a cloture motion at the desk, Mr. President.
Clerk will report the motion.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Matters of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 396, H.R. 2072, and act to reauthorize the Export-Import Bank of the United States and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators.
Mr. President, I would ask unanimous consent that the clerk not be required to read the names.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that mandatory quorum under Rule 22 be waived.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I'm finished here, but I just want to say again, for those that are listening here or watching, Senator Udall and Senator Merkley wanted to do something to change the rules regarding filibuster. If there were anything that ever needed changing in this body, it's the filibuster rule, because it's been abused, abused, and abused. Republican colleague.
Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, I appreciate the Majority Leader's actions on trying to move us forward on a very important jobs bill. The Export-Import Bank is a way to fund manufacturers in the United States so that their products can be sold around the globe. It's kind of like a small business administration finance program for exports. We know the President has said we need to increase exports, and this is a program that's been in place for decades. Never controversial at this degree, and now all of a sudden here we are, weeks before the authorization expires, sitting here arguing over whether we can move forward on this bill. I have great respect for the United States Senate, but there are some times when the United States Senate doesn't get to work out a deal. And we are presented with something that has been worked out by the House of Representatives. Now, we can go back to what the Majority Leader said, how we got in this spot, and that is objecting to every motion to proceed, objecting to every motion to proceed, objecting to every motion to proceed. Pretty soon all the work stacks up. We try to move legislation, and every motion is objected to. So the consequence is we run out of time and we run out of a way to get to a compromise. So in this case, guess what's happened? The House came up with the compromise. The House, even to the degree that some of the amendments that my colleagues wanted to offer, got implemented into the House compromise bill that now passed the House of Representatives, whatever, 300-plus votes to 93. So my colleagues basically, by continuing to just try to derail the normal process here, we have had to take now a House bill that I think encompasses many of the things that people wanted to see either in reforms or ways to make the bank more transparent or ways to make sure that we are focusing on things that are going to help U.S. manufacturers win the day in a very, very competitive market. So I would say to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, yes, Mr. Boehner and Mr. Cantor worked out a compromise, and so now we can, again, take more time here. You can analyze it. You can see whether you agree with that or not. And I certainly like when the Senate works out agreements, and oftentimes we've asked our House colleagues to vote on them. But we are now with a student loan bill that needs to be done, with this Export-Import Bank that needs to be done, and many other important economic agenda items that we should get to for this country. So I hope that when this cloture motion comes forward, that my colleagues will realize that the only things that people are trying to do now are either they can vote no on the program if they don't like it because they are primarily amendments to defund the bank. So these aren't perfecting amendments to a compromise that's been worked out. These are people who want to express their opposition, so they'll have a chance to do that. So I hope, for the sake of thousands of jobs in the United States, for the sake of U.S. competitiveness in a global market where these companies are competing with other companies all around the globe, that my colleagues will take a deep breath and realize this is a compromise piece of legislation, get it done next week, and onto the President's desk so that we can go about winning more jobs in a very competitive global economy. That's what we need to do. And holding out one more day or 3 more days or another week just to get an amendment saying that you hate the Ex-Im Bank is not the way to get things done for America. So I hope my colleagues will support moving ahead and get this onto the President's desk. I thank the President, and I yield the floor.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Senator from Iowa.
President, I ask that further proceedings on the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President,